How do you feel about Kanye going over to Adidas?
I'm cool with Kanye. When I think about Kanye going to Adidas, I don't have a problem with Adidas first and foremost. I mean, I didn't say, Adidas is an evil company. They're horrible. I just said this particular shoe sucks. Just like I might say to one of my kids, I love you, but what you just did was really messed up. Same thing with Adidas. I think the company's fine. And I support Kanye. Not because I agree with everything Kanye's ever said. Not because I like everything Kanye's ever written or done, but because, I think Kanye is one of the closest things that we have to a true artist in the industry. I mean, Kanye is honest. No matter where he takes you to the happy places, to the dark places, to the evil, to the good. He takes you everywhere. And you respect that because he's coming with an authenticity that you don't really get from a lot of the artists that are out here. Plus, my impression is that behind the scenes, Kanye is in alignment with people who think like myself. Kanye, he did the song. When you look at the lyrics of the song "New Slaves," I think that's what it was called. That he's vibing with the whole issue of prisons and what's going on in Black America. Kanye was raised by a very smart woman. His mother was a professor not too far from my house. I have no doubt that what she was as a person spilled directly onto her son. Last time I checked, he was around the corner from where I live, over at Minister Louis Farrakhan's house. And I know that you don't go see Minister Farrakhan if you don't have a reason to be there, if there's not something that that you're hoping to get from that interaction. When I sat and talked to Farrakhan, it was like talking to my own grandfather. So when I look at Kanye West, I just see a guy who is who I think in some ways, I was a little more hopeful. I mean, especially going back to '05 when he took that amazing stand on Hurricane Katrina. I was hoping to kind of see a little more of that, and I don't think I saw as much of that as I wanted to see. But at the same time, in terms of exhibiting, true artistry at the highest levels, Kanye's that guy. In terms of being an asset to the Black community in the way that he sees fit, Kanye's that guy. Besides that, the other stuff, who he's dating or he married Kim Kardashian and stuff like that. I don't judge all that. I mean, that's him just living his life. But as a human being, I have a lot of respect for Kanye West, and I think he's good for the world.
Well, Kanye spoke at Oxford University recently, and he said that classism is the new racism. Would you agree?
No, no, I that I don't agree with. I mean, you can appreciate somebody but not agree with everything they say. I wouldn't say classism is the new racism. I would say racism is the new racism. What unfortunately can happen, I think, sometimes, and I'm not saying this is what happened in this particular case because I didn't hear his quote in context, but I think sometimes we can get to the point where when you hit that point where you're mainstream and you're getting all this mainstream money, meaning white money, what happens is they try to get you to dilute your blackness. They try to get you to stop focusing so much on what's happening in the Black community. I go through this all the time. I have people that say, well, Boyce, you shouldn't talk so much about Black people because you're losing this audience over here and you could have that audience over there. And so to some extent, Black people kind of become what I call the economic whores of many celebrities. And what I mean by economic whore is this. When people think of a whore or a mistress, just a side chick, what they expect the side chick to be loyal to them, but they don't have to be loyal to the side chick, right? Being loyal to the side chick is totally optional, but she's going to be there for you when you need her. But you never make her a priority because you don't have to. At least that's the way some people think. Not that I agree with this, but that's the common notion. Now, with the Black community, that's what you have. You have a lot of celebrities. They know they're Black. We know they're Black. Everybody knows they're Black. But they don't mention anything about the Black community. They don't take a stand on Black issues. They don't give money to Black institutions. They don't support Black causes. You talked about all these multi-millionaire athletes. If you're sitting in an NBA locker room and you got $300 million floating around that room, it's nothing for you to go build a school. It's nothing for you to go open a bank. It's nothing for you guys to pull your money together and create a multi-billion-dollar corporation or at least multi-million-dollar corporation right off the bat with the money that you might blow making it rain at the club. So to me, it's the craziest thing in the world that we have so many Black celebrities, so much of a brain drain in the Black community that our greatest and best and brightest just get sucked away into this this racially neutral la-la land where so many of us are just being left behind in the struggle. I mean, when you look at and I'm not making this up, this isn't just me being delusional here. When I talk about racism in America, look at the statistics. The United Nations has repeatedly cited the United States for the fact that they have severe and persistent unaddressed racial inequality. They said, look at your educational system. White kids are here, black kids are here. Look at your economic system. White unemployment, or white people are here, black people are here. Look at your incarceration. White people are here, black people are here. You have a two-tier society. You're living in denial, though, because somehow you think human rights abuses always happen in other countries. Well, the fact is that they're happening right there in your country. It's just that there are no countries out there strong enough to really hold you accountable. You see, when the United States feels like a country is abusing its people or it's doing something wrong, they'll go and they'll invade the country. Like in Iraq, when we were liberating the Iraqi people from Saddam Hussein, or we'll get involved militarily in Syria or all these other countries, or we'll impose economic sanctions on countries that have policies we don't agree with, like African countries that have gay rights policies that aren't consistent with our own. We're able to impose our will on other people because we have so much money and we have a big military. Nobody can really do that to us. Nobody really checks us. But really, when people are being honest, what they will say is they'll say, okay, yeah, you guys talk about what Hitler did to the Jews, what Stalin did to his own people, what these other countries are doing around the world. But look at what the hell you've done to black people for the last 400 years. Like, you don't have the moral authority to go and preach to anybody because your own country is incredibly fucked up. Excuse my French, but that's what it is. So, I'm not going to say that, going back to your point about Kanye, look, I'm not going to disagree with what Kanye said because I like Kanye. And I think Kanye, I bet you if Kanye were talking for himself, he'd probably even make his argument more elaborate and lay it out there more. I refuse to believe that Kanye is not smart enough to know that racism is real. But if you're asking me, I would say anybody in their right mind who says racism is not an issue in America, an issue of its own by itself that doesn't have to get watered down, diluted, and morphed with some other issue. Anybody who thinks racism is not real in America is either has never been here or is absolutely insane and completely delusional, or they're lying through their teeth. That's just a fact. I would say classism is the old classism. We've always had classism. And I think that what might be argued with a statement like that is, I think what we have some people who might want to believe is they might want to believe that, look, if you're a black person who has money, you're going to be treated better than a white person who has no money. And I'm not going to say that can't be true sometimes. But I'm a black person with money, and there are a whole lot of places I can go in this world where I still feel like I'm a nigga. So, and I don't think having more money would make me that much less of a nigga than I would already be going into some of the places I've tried to go in this world. Because the thing about racism is that people sometimes get it wrong in terms of understanding what racism is. They reduce it to the simplicity of it being collapsed into just attitudes that one person might have toward another. Right? If I talk to a white woman and she clutches her purse, she's being racist. Or if she says, I don't like black people, she's being racist. She calls me the N-word, she's being racist. Well, okay, absolutely fine. But that's not the most dangerous form of racism. The most dangerous form of racism is institutional and structural racism. And that's not something you build overnight. That's not something that's built in one conversation. And it's certainly not something that can be healed in one conversation or people just holding hands and singing, "We shall overcome." Institutionalized racism is the result of the fact that for 400 years, we have had a society in which whites were allowed to live one way, blacks were allowed to live another. For hundreds of years, whites were allowed to accumulate wealth. Black people were not allowed to accumulate wealth, were not allowed access to wealth. And when they built wealth, there was a good chance that a mob of white people were going to come in, burn down the house, kill the family, and take all their money. That's what happened on Black Wall Street. So as a result of that occurring, the same instances occurring, this culture existing for hundreds of years, you now have a society in 2015 where if I walk down the street in Manhattan and I count all those multi-billion-dollar buildings, on Park Avenue, I guarantee you that almost none of those buildings are owned by black people. And it's not because black people are lazy or black people don't know how to manage money. It's because that most of that real estate was passed down from one generation to the next. So if your forefathers were racist enough, you don't have to be racist to be a beneficiary of structural racism. You understand? So I think that's where we have to look. When you're looking for the culprit of racism, you got to look at things like the educational system. Why is it that the schools that are majority black tend to have less money than the schools that are majority white? Well, it's because the tax base is lower in mostly black neighborhoods than it is in white neighborhoods. If you want to look for racism, go look at the criminal justice system. Why is it that the states that have the most black slaves also have the most black prison inmates? It's because there's a link between the way the modern justice system is structured and the way slavery occurred 150 years ago. If you want to look for racism, also look in corporate America. Look at the wealth disparities. Look at universities that have never hired a black person. A lot of universities have departments that have never hired a black person in over 150 years of existence, and they think that that's normal. That is not normal. That is not normal at all. But for some reason, we're so accustomed to seeing white guys at the top and white people having everything that we don't think it's normal that black people are being so shut out. But in fact, one example, and I'll say this and I'm done with this. Look at some of the old movies from the 1950s and 40s and 60s. I like to watch The Twilight Zone. And it's funny because when I watch old movies from the 50s and the 60s and the 40s, you almost think black people don't exist. Like, you literally will watch 100 episodes in a row and not see one single black person. But black people did exist back then. They just weren't being given any opportunities. And most wealth in America is inherited wealth. So if our forefathers had everything taken from them, all their land, all their opportunities, all their money, and had no access to justice, then what do you think that leaves their children? That it leaves them where we are in 2015, where people look at that poor black kid and say, why ain't you got shit? It must be because you don't work as hard as me. No, it's because you started life on third base and think you hit a triple. And that's the biggest lie that you've been told. And the reason that lie persists is because in America, we do not teach history. And when you don't know your history, then you can't understand the present, because the present was built in the past. And most Americans don't know anything about history before 1965. And they don't even know that much about that.